before the first temple rose from the earth, before priests gathered communities and places of worship, before sacred books were written, before the names of the world's great religions were ever spoken, humanity was already asking questions. Questions so ancient that no one remembers who first whispered them. What happens after death? Why does the sun return every morning? Who sends the rain? Why do storms arrive without warning? Why are we here? These questions are older than kingdoms, older than pyramids, older than writing itself. For hundreds of thousands of years, our ancestors lived in a world filled with mystery. Every sunrise, every thunderstorm, every eclipse, every birth, and every death must have seemed extraordinary. The natural world was beautiful, but it could also be frightening. Lightning split the sky without warning. Rivers flooded entire valleys. The seasons changed with quiet certainty, yet no one understood why. Long before science offered explanations, human beings searched for meaning. But what did those earliest people actually believe? Did they think spirits lived inside forests? Did they see power in animals? Did they honor their ancestors? Or were their beliefs something completely different, something we have not yet discovered? The truth is, we do not know with certainty. Unlike later civilizations, these ancient people left behind no written records. They carved no detailed histories into stone. They left no books explaining their beliefs, no prayers preserved for future generations, and no names for the ideas that shaped their world. Instead, they left only fragments. A carefully buried skeleton. A cave wall covered with paintings. A handful of red ochre scattered across an ancient grave. Stone tools arranged with unexpected care. Tiny clues, separated by tens of thousands of years, waiting patiently beneath the earth for archaeologists to uncover. From these silent discoveries, scientists have spent decades attempting to reconstruct humanity's earliest spiritual journey. Some evidence is remarkably strong. Other conclusions remain educated interpretations. And many questions are still debated by archaeologists, anthropologists, and historians today. That uncertainty is not a weakness. It is simply part of understanding a past so distant that much of it has disappeared forever. Before we continue, it is important to make one thing clear. This documentary explores archaeological discoveries, anthropological research, and scientific theories about prehistoric human beliefs before written history. It is not intended to challenge, compare, or judge any modern religion or the deeply held beliefs of its followers. The world's religions each have their own sacred traditions, histories, and teachings. Our journey today looks much further back, to a time before recorded civilization, when the earliest members of our species were only beginning to understand both the world around them and the questions within themselves. Tonight we travel back not thousands, but hundreds of thousands of years, to a world where there were no temples, no scriptures, no civilizations, only small groups of humans standing beneath an endless sky, looking upward, and perhaps for the very first time, wondering whether there was something beyond what their eyes could see. Hundreds of thousands of years before the first cities rose from the earth, before kings ruled great civilizations, before temples echoed with prayer, human life was remarkably simple. Yet at the same time, it was unimaginably difficult. Our ancestors did not wake to the sounds of busy streets or crowded marketplaces. There were no permanent homes waiting to shelter them, no fields of grain ready for harvest, no written language to preserve knowledge, no maps showing where safety could be found. Instead, they belonged to small bands of hunter-gatherers, rarely numbering more than a few dozen people. Together, they wandered across vast landscapes in search of food, fresh water, and shelter. Some lived among the open grasslands of Africa. Others traveled through dense forests, rocky valleys, or along winding rivers. Every sunrise marked the beginning of another uncertain day. Food could never be taken for granted. A successful hunt might feed the group for several days. A failed hunt could mean hunger for everyone. They gathered berries, roots, fruits, nuts, wild honey, and edible plants whenever they could. Nothing was wasted. Every discovery mattered. Every meal represented another day of survival. Life itself depended upon movement. When food became scarce, they moved. When water disappeared, they moved. When dangerous predators entered their territory, they moved once again. The world was constantly changing, and so were they. Yet hunger was not their only challenge. Nature surrounded them with mysteries that no one could explain. Imagine standing alone beneath a perfectly clear sky. Without warning, dark clouds begin gathering across the horizon. The wind grows stronger. The air suddenly becomes cold. Then lightning tears across the heavens with blinding brilliance. A deafening roar follows only moments later. Today we understand thunderstorms through science. Our ancestors did not. To them, such moments must have seemed overwhelming. The sky itself appeared alive. Every storm carried uncertainty. Every flash of lightning demanded attention. Every clap of thunder reminded them how small they truly were. Night brought different fears. When darkness covered the land, familiar paths disappeared. The sounds of unseen animals echoed through the trees. Eyes glowed beyond the reach of the firelight. Lions, leopards, hyenas, creatures perfectly adapted to hunting beneath the cover of darkness. The campfire became more than warmth. It became safety. People gathered close together. Parents held their children near. The flames pushed back the darkness, but only a little. Beyond that circle of light, the unknown waited patiently. Then there was death. Every small tribe experienced loss. An elder who never awoke. A hunter who failed to return. A child taken by illness. Unlike hunger or storms, death presented a mystery that no one could escape. The body remained, but something essential was gone. Where had that person gone? Why had life disappeared? Would they ever return? No one can know exactly what our ancestors thought. They left behind no written answers. Yet archaeology suggests that death gradually began to hold deeper meaning. Some of the earliest human burials appear to have been carried out with care. Bodies were sometimes placed deliberately into the ground rather than simply abandoned. In certain places, red ochre accompanied the dead. Elsewhere, simple objects were buried beside them. Scientists continue to debate exactly what these discoveries mean. Were they practical? Were they symbolic? Or did they reflect some of humanity's earliest attempts to understand death itself? The evidence cannot give us complete certainty, but it does suggest that something was changing. At the same time, another remarkable transformation was unfolding inside the human mind. The human brain had already grown larger than that of our earliest ancestors. But size alone was not the greatest change. Increasingly, humans seemed capable of thinking beyond the present moment. They could remember the past, imagine the future, recognize patterns, plan tomorrow's hunt, teach their children through stories and imitation. Most importantly, they could attach meaning to things that could not be touched. A strange rock, a familiar tree, a place where someone had died, an unusual animal encounter. These experiences may have become more than simple observations. They may have become symbols. It is important, however, to distinguish between instinct and belief. Instinct is something shared by many animals. A gazelle runs from danger without needing to understand why. Birds build nests without studying architecture. Wolves cooperate during a hunt because evolution has shaped their behavior over countless generations. Humans possess instincts too. We fear sudden danger. We protect our children. We search for food when hungry. But belief is something different. Belief allows the mind to imagine what cannot be seen, to wonder whether unseen forces exist, to ask questions that have no immediate answer, to search not only for survival, but for meaning. Exactly when this ability fully emerged remains one of the greatest mysteries in human evolution. Scientists continue to debate how rapidly symbolic thought developed and what role it played in shaping our species. New discoveries continue to reshape our understanding. Yet one idea appears again and again across archaeology, anthropology, and cognitive science. Long before civilization, long before organized religion, long before written history, something inside the human mind had begun to change. Long before cities rose from the earth, long before temples echoed with prayer, long before names were carved into stone, human beings had already begun treating death differently. For countless generations, our ancestors lived in a dangerous world where survival demanded nearly every ounce of their attention. Food had to be found. Predators had to be avoided. Children had to be protected. Every day presented new challenges, and every season brought fresh uncertainty. Yet somewhere in that distant past, something remarkable began to happen. When a member of the group died, they were not always left behind. Instead, some were carefully laid to rest. To modern eyes, a burial may seem ordinary. Almost every culture throughout history has buried its dead in one form or another. But for archaeologists, the earliest burials represent something extraordinary. They may offer one of the very first glimpses into the inner world of the human mind. Unlike stone tools which tell us how people survived, or animal bones which reveal what they ate, burials may reveal something far more difficult to uncover: what they thought, what they felt, and perhaps, what they believed. One of the most remarkable discoveries comes from a cave in what is now northern Israel. Known today as Qafzeh Cave, this site preserves evidence of early Homo sapiens living roughly 100,000 years ago. Among the discoveries were carefully buried human skeletons. These were not scattered bones left behind by predators. The bodies appeared to have been intentionally placed into the ground. In one burial, archaeologists found the remains of a young individual with deer antlers positioned nearby. The placement appears deliberate. Exactly why those antlers were included remains uncertain. Some researchers suggest they may have held symbolic meaning. Others urge caution, reminding us that the evidence cannot reveal the thoughts of the people who placed them there. The objects are real. Their meaning remains open to interpretation. Not far away lies another important archaeological site. Today it is known as Skhul Cave. Here, researchers uncovered several early human burials dating to roughly the same period. Again, the bodies appeared to have been placed with care rather than abandoned where death occurred. This repeated pattern attracted the attention of archaeologists around the world. Intentional burial requires time. It requires effort. Most importantly, it requires the living to care for someone who can no longer contribute to the group's survival. In a world where every calorie mattered, that decision may have carried enormous significance. Thousands of kilometers away, another discovery added even more questions. In the mountains of what is now northern Iraq lies Shanidar Cave. The cave became famous after archaeologists uncovered the remains of several Neanderthals. One individual appeared to have lived for many years despite severe injuries that would likely have prevented independent survival. His body showed signs of serious disabilities, yet he had survived long enough for broken bones to heal. This suggests that others may have cared for him over many years. Whether he was later buried with ceremony remains the subject of scientific debate. Earlier interpretations proposed that flowers had been placed around one of the burials. Later research questioned that conclusion, suggesting natural processes may explain the pollen found in the soil. Today, many archaeologists remain cautious. The evidence is fascinating, but not conclusive. This is one of the most important lessons in archaeology. Evidence and interpretation are not the same thing. The bones themselves are evidence. The position of the skeleton is evidence. The surrounding soil, the stone tools, the animal remains, all are evidence. But the meaning we assign to those discoveries often involves interpretation. Scientists examine the facts. They compare discoveries from many different sites. They test competing explanations. And as new evidence appears, their conclusions sometimes change. That is how science moves forward. Among the most intriguing discoveries associated with early burials is the use of red ochre. Red ochre is a naturally occurring mineral rich in iron oxide. When ground into powder, it produces a deep red pigment resembling the color of blood. Across Africa, the Middle East, and later Europe, archaeologists have discovered ancient graves containing traces of this remarkable material. Exactly why it was used remains unknown. Perhaps it symbolized life. Perhaps it represented rebirth. Perhaps it served an entirely practical purpose unrelated to symbolism. No written explanation survives. Only the pigment itself remains. Yet its repeated appearance suggests that it mattered. Some burials also contain what archaeologists call grave goods. These are objects deliberately placed beside the deceased. Stone tools, animal bones, shell beads, pieces of antler, ornaments. Again, their presence raises profound questions. Were these items gifts, possessions, symbols, or simply familiar objects placed beside someone who had died? No one can answer with certainty. What we can say is that these discoveries show intention. The living did something more than simply leave the body behind. They paused. They prepared. They remembered. Perhaps. They mourned. Respect for the dead may have become one of the earliest expressions of something uniquely human. Not because burial itself proves religion. It does not. Nor does it prove belief in an afterlife. The archaeological evidence cannot tell us exactly what early humans believed. What it does show is that death was beginning to receive special treatment. That alone marks an important turning point. Somewhere deep within the evolving human mind, loss may have become more than a biological event. Memory, emotion, and perhaps the search for meaning were beginning to shape human behavior in new ways. The graves remain silent. They cannot speak. Yet across tens of thousands of years, they continue asking the same quiet question. Why did the living choose to care so deeply for those who could no longer speak for themselves? Perhaps we will never know the complete answer. But the careful burials at Qafzeh, the discoveries at Skhul, the mysteries of Shanidar, the traces of red ochre, and the objects left beside the dead, all suggest that humanity was beginning to see death differently. Not simply as the end of life, but as something worthy of remembrance. Death may have become more than an ending. Long before written language, long before great civilizations built monuments of stone, long before sacred stories were passed from one generation to the next, humanity lived surrounded by a world that seemed endlessly mysterious. Every morning, the sun climbed above the horizon with remarkable certainty. Every evening, darkness slowly reclaimed the land. The seasons changed without explanation. The rivers flowed year after year. Mountains stood unmoving for countless generations. To us, these are familiar parts of nature. To our distant ancestors, they may have appeared far more extraordinary. Imagine living in a world without science. There are no books explaining why rivers flood. No astronomy describing the movement of the stars. No geology revealing how mountains are formed. No meteorology predicting tomorrow's weather. Every event becomes a mystery. Every mystery invites a question. And every unanswered question encourages the human mind to search for meaning. One idea that many anthropologists and archaeologists have explored is known today as animism. Animism is the belief that elements of the natural world, such as animals, rivers, mountains, forests, or even the wind, possess a kind of spirit or living essence. Today, animistic beliefs continue to exist within various cultures around the world. Because of this, some researchers have wondered whether similar ways of thinking may also have existed among prehistoric humans. It is an intriguing possibility, but it is important to understand something from the very beginning. There is currently no direct archaeological evidence proving that the earliest Homo sapiens practiced animism. No ancient writing survives from that distant age. No symbols clearly explain what they believed. The idea remains a scientific hypothesis, one that is widely discussed, but not universally accepted. What archaeology provides are clues. The interpretation of those clues remains open to debate. Still, the natural world almost certainly shaped the lives of our ancestors more than it shapes ours today. Consider the rivers. For hunter-gatherers, rivers were far more than beautiful landscapes. They provided drinking water, fish, edible plants. Animals gathered along their banks. Entire journeys were planned around reliable water sources. A river could give life, yet the same river could also destroy it. Heavy rains transformed calm streams into violent floods. Crossing became impossible. Children could be swept away. Camps disappeared beneath rising water. A single river possessed both generosity and danger. Mountains inspired similar wonder. From great distances they dominated the horizon. Snow remained upon their peaks while valleys below grew warm. Storm clouds gathered around them. Echoes rolled through their cliffs. Caves hidden within their slopes offered shelter from rain, wind, and predators. To people who understood neither tectonic plates nor erosion, mountains may have seemed timeless, almost eternal. Fire may have inspired even greater fascination. Unlike rivers or mountains, fire could be created, protected. Sure. It gave warmth during freezing nights. It frightened away predators. It transformed raw meat into cooked meals. It hardened wooden spear tips. It illuminated darkness. Without fire, many human communities might never have survived. Yet fire remained unpredictable. It escaped control. Lightning could ignite vast forests. Strong winds turned tiny flames into unstoppable infernos. The same force that preserved life could also destroy it. Animals occupied an equally important place within prehistoric life. Some became food. Others became deadly predators. Many displayed remarkable abilities humans could only observe with admiration. Birds disappeared into the sky. Wolves hunted with perfect coordination. Elephants remembered distant waterholes. Lions ruled the grasslands with astonishing confidence. Our ancestors watched these creatures every single day. They studied their movements, learned their behavior, respected their strength. Some archaeologists have suggested that this close relationship with animals may eventually have influenced symbolic thinking. Yet, this remains an interpretation rather than proven fact. Perhaps certain animals became associated with particular qualities: strength, speed, wisdom, endurance, or perhaps they were simply respected because survival depended upon understanding them. The archaeological record cannot tell us with certainty. As the human brain continued evolving, another remarkable ability became increasingly important: the ability to think symbolically. A symbol is something that represents more than itself. A simple object, a place, an animal, or even a color, can begin carrying deeper meaning inside the human mind. This capacity separates much of human thinking from simple instinct. A stone is no longer merely a stone. It may become a marker, a memory, a reminder, a gathering place. A piece of red ochre may become more than colored earth. It may carry emotional significance. Whether those meanings were spiritual, social, or entirely practical, often remains impossible to determine. This uncertainty sometimes frustrates archaeologists. Yet it also makes prehistoric humanity endlessly fascinating. Every new discovery raises new questions. Did early humans see spirits within nature? Did they simply admire the natural world? Were symbolic behaviors connected to survival alone? Or were entirely different ideas developing inside minds much like our own? Science cannot yet provide definite answers. Researchers continue discovering new archaeological sites. New dating methods improve our understanding. Fresh evidence sometimes challenges ideas that were once widely accepted. Other discoveries strengthen existing theories. This willingness to revise conclusions is one of science's greatest strengths. It allows our understanding of the distant past to become more accurate over time. Perhaps the most honest answer is also the simplest. The natural world clearly shaped every aspect of prehistoric human life. Forests offered shelter. Rivers sustained survival. Mountains inspired awe. Fire transformed existence. Animals became both teachers and rivals. Whether our ancestors believed these parts of nature possessed unseen spirits, or whether they simply respected their immense power, remains one of the oldest unanswered questions in human history. But something was undeniably changing. The human mind was becoming increasingly capable of imagining meanings beyond immediate survival. The world was no longer only a place of food, danger, and shelter. It was becoming a place filled with questions, and perhaps with possibilities. Perhaps the world itself no longer seemed empty. Long before books, long before written language, long before history was recorded on paper or carved into stone, human beings had already begun leaving messages, not with words, but with images. Hidden deep inside caves across different parts of the world, these remarkable paintings have survived for tens of thousands of years. Protected from wind, rain, and sunlight, they remain among the oldest windows into the minds of our ancestors. Unlike stone tools or animal bones, cave paintings reveal something different. They reveal imagination. They reveal intention. And perhaps, they reveal the beginning of humanity's search for meaning. One of the most extraordinary discoveries lies in southern France. Today it is known as Chauvet Cave. Discovered in 1994, the cave contains some of the oldest known figurative paintings ever found, dating back roughly 36,000 years. Walking through Chauvet is like stepping into another world. The walls are covered with astonishing images of horses, lions, mammoths, rhinoceroses, bison, and many other Ice Age animals. The artists painted them with remarkable skill. Some animals appear to be running. Others seem to turn their heads. Using the uneven surfaces of the cave walls, the painters created a surprising sense of movement and depth. Even today the artwork feels alive. Thousands of years later, another remarkable cave would be discovered elsewhere in France. Known as Lascaux Cave, it contains hundreds of magnificent paintings created approximately 17,000 years ago. Gigantic wild bulls dominate many of the walls. Horses race across the stone. Deer leap through imagined landscapes. The ceiling itself seems alive with animals. The scale of the artwork is breathtaking. Many of these paintings were created in chambers far from the cave entrance. Some areas are completely dark. To reach them required careful planning, torches, and determination. This raises an important question. Why travel so deep into darkness simply to create art that almost no one would casually see? The answer remains one of archaeology's greatest mysteries. Remarkable discoveries are not limited to Europe. On the Indonesian island of Sulawesi, archaeologists uncovered ancient cave paintings that are among the oldest known anywhere in the world. These include detailed images of wild pigs and mysterious hand stencils created tens of thousands of years ago. The discovery transformed our understanding of early human creativity. For many years, researchers believed sophisticated cave art had first appeared mainly in Europe. Sulawesi demonstrated that artistic expression was emerging in different parts of the world during roughly similar periods. Human imagination was not confined to one place. It belonged to our species. Among the most recognizable images found inside prehistoric caves are simple handprints. At first glance, they appear almost ordinary. A hand placed against stone, pigment blown around the fingers, then the hand removed, leaving behind only its outline. Thousands of years later, that silent impression still remains. Whose hand was it? A hunter? A child? A mother? A respected elder? No one can know. Yet these simple marks create an extraordinary connection across time. For a brief moment, it feels as though someone from the distant past reached forward, simply to say, "I was here." Animals dominate nearly every great collection of prehistoric cave art. Curiously, humans appear far less often. This imbalance has fascinated archaeologists for decades. Why were animals painted so frequently? Several explanations have been proposed. One theory suggests that the paintings reflected everyday life. Large animals were central to survival. They provided food, clothing, tools, and materials for shelter. Perhaps artists simply painted the creatures they knew best. Another theory proposes that the paintings played a role in hunting rituals. According to this idea, painting an animal may have been connected with hopes for a successful hunt. Creating the image might have strengthened confidence or formed part of a shared ceremony before hunters entered the wilderness. Some researchers believe certain caves may have served as special gathering places where communities performed rituals or shared important traditions. Others remain unconvinced. There is currently no direct evidence proving exactly how these paintings were used. A third interpretation focuses on symbolic thinking. Rather than recording daily life, perhaps the paintings represented stories, memories, teachings, or ideas passed between generations. The cave walls may have functioned as visual classrooms where knowledge could be preserved without writing. This remains a hypothesis rather than an established fact. The truth is that no prehistoric artist left behind an explanation. No captions accompany the paintings. No written records describe their purpose. Everything archaeologists conclude must be built carefully from physical evidence. This distinction is essential. The paintings themselves are undeniable evidence. Their age can often be estimated through modern scientific dating techniques. The pigments can be analyzed. The caves can be mapped. But their meaning cannot be measured so easily. Different scientists sometimes reach different conclusions using the same discoveries. That is not a weakness of archaeology. It is part of the scientific process. As new technologies emerge, new caves are discovered, and fresh evidence appears, our understanding continues to evolve. Each generation asks new questions, and sometimes finds new answers. Perhaps prehistoric cave art served many purposes rather than only one. Some paintings may have celebrated successful hunts. Others may have preserved stories. Still others may simply have expressed the deeply human desire to create. Whatever their original purpose, these images reveal something extraordinary. Long before alphabets, long before books, long before civilization, human beings were already transforming blank stone into something meaningful. They were leaving ideas where none had existed before. Not through speech, not through writing, but through images that have survived across unimaginable stretches of time. Even today, they continue inviting us to wonder what their creators hoped future generations might see. Perhaps we will never know exactly what they meant. But one possibility remains beautifully compelling. The walls may have become humanity's first canvas of meaning. Long before temples, long before priests, long before written prayers were ever spoken, Human communities may already have included certain individuals who seemed different from everyone else. People who healed the sick, people who interpreted dreams, people who led ceremonies around the fire, people who appeared unusually connected to the mysteries of the natural world. Today, anthropologists often use the word shaman to describe ritual specialists found in many traditional societies. These individuals may serve as healers, storytellers, spiritual guides, mediators, or leaders of ceremonies. But an important question remains. Did prehistoric humans have shamans? The honest answer is that we do not know for certain. No cave painting contains a label saying, "This person was a shaman." No written record survives from that distant age. What researchers possess are clues, archaeological discoveries, unusual burials, symbolic artifacts, and comparisons with later human cultures. From those clues, some scholars have proposed that ritual specialists may have existed long before recorded history. Others remain cautious, arguing that the evidence is too uncertain to draw firm conclusions. One reason the idea persists is that nearly every known human society has developed some form of ritual leadership. Whether among hunter-gatherers, early farmers, or complex civilizations, communities often include individuals who perform ceremonies, preserve traditions, or help others navigate experiences that seem mysterious or frightening. That pattern has led some anthropologists to wonder whether such roles might be very ancient indeed. Consider healing. Prehistoric life was dangerous. People suffered injuries from hunting, falls, animal attacks, and accidents. Illnesses appeared without explanation. Fevers rose suddenly. Wounds became infected. Some people recovered. Others did not. In many traditional societies documented by ethnographers, certain individuals become known for their knowledge of plants, treatments, and healing practices. They may also perform rituals intended to comfort the sick or strengthen community morale. It is possible that some prehistoric humans played similar roles. But this remains an interpretation rather than direct proof. Another clue comes from the strange and fascinating world of trance. Across many cultures, humans have discovered ways of entering altered states of consciousness through dancing, chanting, fasting, meditation, rhythmic movement, or other practices. Some researchers have suggested that certain prehistoric cave paintings, especially those showing unusual human-animal figures, might reflect trance experiences. Perhaps artists were attempting to depict visions, dreams, or symbolic journeys. Yet this interpretation is debated. Others argue that the figures may represent myths, stories, costumes, or artistic imagination rather than trance states. The images themselves cannot tell us exactly what their creators experienced. Music may also have played a role. Archaeologists have discovered ancient flutes made from bone dating back tens of thousands of years. Percussion instruments made from wood, hide, or other perishable materials rarely survive, but many scholars believe rhythmic sound was likely important in prehistoric social life. Imagine a circle of people gathered around a fire at night. Voices rising together. Hands striking drums. Feet moving in rhythm. The experience could strengthen social bonds, coordinate group behavior, and create powerful shared emotions. Whether such gatherings were primarily practical, social, artistic, or spiritual remains difficult to determine. This is where archaeology reaches one of its greatest challenges. Behavior leaves traces. Belief often does not. A burial can be excavated. A painted cave wall can be photographed. A bone flute can be measured and dated. But the thoughts inside a prehistoric person's mind are largely invisible. Because of this, researchers often combine archaeology with ethnography, the study of living and historically documented cultures. By comparing patterns across many societies, they explore possibilities that might help explain ancient evidence. However, such comparisons must be used carefully. Modern or recent hunter-gatherer cultures are not living fossils. They have their own complex histories and cannot simply be treated as direct copies of prehistoric people. Ethnography can suggest possibilities. It cannot prove exactly what happened tens of thousands of years ago. For this reason, responsible scholars often distinguish between evidence and speculation. Evidence: unusual burials, cave art, musical instruments, symbolic objects, and signs of long-term care for injured individuals. Speculation: the claim that a particular person was definitely a shaman, that a specific painting records a trance vision, or that a ceremony had a precise spiritual meaning. The first category can be studied directly. The second category requires interpretation, and interpretations can change as new discoveries appear. Still, when we place all the clues side by side, a fascinating picture begins to emerge. Human communities were becoming increasingly symbolic. People cared for the sick. They buried the dead. They created art. They gathered around fire. They made music. They shared stories and traditions. In such communities, it is not difficult to imagine that some individuals gradually became known for special knowledge, unusual experiences, or the ability to help others make sense of a mysterious world. Whether we call them shamans, ritual leaders, healers, or something else entirely, the possibility remains intriguing. Perhaps the earliest spiritual specialists were not powerful priests ruling great temples. Perhaps they were simply respected members of small hunter-gatherer bands, people who listened carefully to dreams, remembered old stories, treated wounds, led ceremonies, and helped their communities face fear, loss, illness, and uncertainty. Archaeology cannot yet confirm their existence beyond doubt, but it suggests that the human search for guidance may be very ancient indeed. Some people may have begun guiding others through mysteries no one could explain. Long before great temples, long before formal ceremonies, long before sacred books preserved ancient traditions, human beings may already have been gathering together in ways that carried meaning beyond simple survival. Every hunter-gatherer community depended upon cooperation. No one survived alone. Food was shared. Children were protected by the entire group. Knowledge passed from one generation to the next. Trust became one of humanity's greatest strengths. As human societies grew more connected, their gatherings may also have begun to change. At first, people likely came together for practical reasons. A successful hunt, the arrival of migrating animals, the beginning of the rainy season, the birth of a child, the recovery of an injured companion, or the loss of someone who would never return. These moments affected everyone. They were shared experiences, and shared experiences often create shared traditions. One of the most important gathering places was almost certainly the fire. For hundreds of thousands of years, fire transformed human life. It provided warmth during cold nights. It frightened away dangerous predators. It cooked food, making many plants and animals safer to eat. Its light extended the day long after the sun had disappeared. But fire offered something else as well. It brought people together. When darkness covered the landscape, small groups naturally gathered around the flames. Faces became visible. Voices carried through the quiet night. Stories could be told. Children listened. Elders remembered. Hunters described distant journeys. Knowledge that might otherwise disappear could now be shared with everyone. Some anthropologists have suggested that these nightly gatherings may have played a profound role in shaping early human culture. The fire became more than a source of heat. It became the center of community life. Whether special ceremonies developed around fire during this early period remains uncertain. Archaeology has not yet provided direct evidence proving organized fire rituals among the earliest Homo sapiens. Yet throughout later human history, fire repeatedly appears at the center of ceremonies across many different cultures. Because of this pattern, some researchers believe the importance of fire may stretch far back into prehistory. It is an intriguing possibility, but one that remains a hypothesis rather than established fact. As human groups became increasingly familiar with the rhythms of nature, certain times of year likely gained special importance. The arrival of migrating herds, the return of seasonal rains, the flowering of familiar plants, the ripening of fruit. These repeating events determined whether communities would thrive or struggle. People learned to anticipate them. They remembered them. They prepared for them. Some scholars suggest that seasonal changes may have encouraged larger gatherings between neighboring groups. Families that spent much of the year separated might occasionally meet again. News could be exchanged. Stone tools traded. Marriage partners found. Friendships renewed. Children introduced to relatives they had never met. These seasonal gatherings strengthened connections that extended far beyond a single camp. Although direct archaeological evidence remains limited, many anthropologists believe such meetings may have helped create stronger regional communities. Gatherings also created opportunities for shared traditions. Perhaps certain songs were always sung. Perhaps particular dances accompanied celebrations. Perhaps familiar stories were told each time the groups reunited. No written record survives to tell us exactly what happened. But oral tradition requires repetition. Stories survive because people tell them again, and again, and again. Long before writing existed, memory became humanity's library. Every generation inherited knowledge from those who came before. Where to find water, which plants healed wounds, when animals migrated, how to shape stone tools, and perhaps, stories explaining the world itself. Over time, repeated actions can become symbols. A simple gesture repeated across generations may begin carrying deeper meaning. A particular place may become associated with important gatherings. A familiar melody may remind listeners of ancestors long gone. Even sharing food in a certain way can strengthen a group's identity. This is one of the remarkable features of symbolic thinking. Ordinary actions gradually become meaningful because communities agree they matter. Cooperation also became stronger through these shared experiences. Modern psychology suggests that participating in group activities, whether singing, dancing, storytelling, or shared meals, can increase trust between individuals. Many researchers believe similar processes likely operated among prehistoric humans. Groups that cooperated effectively often survived more successfully than those divided by conflict. Shared traditions may therefore have provided practical advantages as well as emotional comfort. This does not necessarily mean every gathering was religious. Many may have been entirely social. Others may have celebrated successful hunts. Some may have marked changing seasons. Others may simply have brought families together after months apart. The archaeological record rarely allows us to distinguish between these possibilities. Once again, evidence and interpretation are not the same. Evidence includes hearths where fires burned repeatedly, stone tools left behind by large gatherings, animal bones showing communal meals, pigments used during special occasions. The meanings attached to these discoveries remain matters of careful interpretation. Scientists continue comparing archaeological sites across Africa, Europe, Asia, and Australia. Each new discovery adds another piece to humanity's story. Sometimes long-held ideas are challenged. Sometimes they are strengthened. Science grows because evidence continues to grow. Yet one pattern appears increasingly clear. Human communities were becoming more connected, more cooperative, more symbolic. People were no longer surviving only as individuals. They were building traditions that belonged to everyone, around glowing fires, beneath changing seasons. Through stories carried only by memory, something remarkable was taking shape. Culture itself, not written, not carved into stone, but carried within human minds, shared voices, and remembered experiences. Perhaps no one realized it at the time. Yet every repeated gathering, every familiar story, every shared celebration, helped weave invisible bonds between people. Bonds stronger than fear, stronger than distance, stronger than a single lifetime. And slowly, almost without anyone noticing, belief was becoming something communities could share. For hundreds of thousands of years, human beings lived as hunter-gatherers. They followed migrating animals. They gathered wild fruits, roots, and seeds. Their camps moved with the changing seasons. The land itself determined where people lived. Nothing remained permanent for very long. But slowly, almost imperceptibly, human life began to change. Around 12,000 years ago, as the last ice age drew to a close, climates became warmer and more stable across many parts of the world. Forests expanded. Grasslands shifted. Wild grains grew in greater abundance. Animal populations changed. These environmental changes created new opportunities for human communities. Instead of constantly moving in search of food, some groups began spending longer periods in the same locations. At first, these may have been seasonal camps. People returned to familiar valleys year after year. They remembered where water flowed reliably, where wild cereals grew, where animals migrated. Generation after generation, certain places became increasingly familiar. Eventually, in several regions of the world, people began doing something entirely new. Rather than simply collecting wild plants, they started cultivating them. Seeds that had once been gathered from nature were deliberately planted. The harvest could now be encouraged instead of merely discovered. At roughly the same time, some wild animals gradually became domesticated. Goats, sheep, later cattle. These changes did not happen overnight. Agriculture developed slowly across many centuries. Different regions followed different paths. But together, these changes transformed human history. Food became more predictable. Communities no longer needed to travel constantly. Permanent homes slowly replaced temporary shelters. Villages appeared. Families remained together throughout the year. Children grew up in the same places where their parents had lived. The landscape itself became part of people's identity. One of the earliest known settlements is Jericho, located in the Jordan Valley. Evidence suggests that people were living there nearly 11,000 years ago. Stone houses stood close together. Walls surrounded parts of the settlement. Large numbers of people now shared the same community. Life had become very different from the small, mobile bands of earlier hunter-gatherers. Living together in larger numbers created new challenges. Resources needed to be shared. Disagreements had to be resolved. Knowledge became more important than ever. Traditions that once belonged to small families now spread throughout entire villages. Shared customs helped maintain cooperation. As communities grew, their ceremonies may also have become more organized. One archaeological site has transformed the way researchers think about this remarkable transition. It lies in southeastern Turkey. Today it is known as Göbekli Tepe. Discovered during the 20th century and extensively excavated in recent decades, Göbekli Tepe dates back roughly 11 to 12,000 years. Its enormous circular stone structures are unlike anything archaeologists expected to find from this period. Massive limestone pillars rise several meters into the air. Many are carved with extraordinary images of animals: foxes, snakes, wild boars, birds, scorpions, lions. The craftsmanship is astonishing. Even more remarkable, Göbekli Tepe appears to have been built before pottery became common, and before fully developed farming had spread throughout the region. This surprised archaeologists. For many years, scholars assumed that agriculture came first, followed by villages, followed by organized ritual centers. Göbekli Tepe suggested the story might be more complicated. Some researchers now propose that large ceremonial gatherings may actually have encouraged people to settle together. Communities may have needed reliable food supplies to support the construction and maintenance of these impressive monuments. So, organized ritual may have helped drive the development of agriculture rather than simply following it. Not every archaeologist agrees. Some believe farming had already begun nearby. Others argue that the relationship between agriculture and ritual developed gradually over many generations. The debate continues, and each new excavation adds fresh evidence to the discussion. What is clear is that Göbekli Tepe represents an extraordinary level of cooperation. Hundreds of people may have worked together to quarry, transport, and raise enormous stone pillars. Such projects required planning, communication, shared purpose, and perhaps shared beliefs. Yet we must be careful. The stone circles themselves are evidence. Their exact purpose remains uncertain. Some researchers describe Göbekli Tepe as the world's oldest known temple complex. Others prefer more cautious terms such as ceremonial center or ritual gathering place. Without written records, no one can know precisely what occurred there. Archaeology can reveal remarkable structures. It cannot always reveal the thoughts of the people who built them. As villages continued growing larger, daily life changed in countless ways. Families farmed nearby fields. Harvests were stored for future seasons. Craft specialists emerged. Trade networks expanded. Communities became increasingly connected. With larger populations came greater opportunities to preserve traditions. Ceremonies could now involve hundreds of participants instead of only a few dozen. Stories passed through generations became more consistent. Symbols became widely recognized within entire communities. Leaders may have taken on increasingly specialized roles, not only organizing work, but also guiding important gatherings. The slow path toward organized religion had begun. It was not the result of a single invention, nor did it emerge in one place at one moment. Instead, it developed gradually through thousands of years of changing human life. Hunter-gatherers became farmers. Temporary camps became villages. Villages became larger settlements. Shared traditions became increasingly structured. Ceremonies became more elaborate. Symbols became more recognizable. Community identity grew stronger. Yet even now, the great religions familiar to the modern world had not yet appeared. There were no sacred scriptures. No vast empires built around organized faith. No monumental cathedrals or towering temples dominating great cities. Those chapters of human history still lay far in the future. But beneath the surface, something important was already taking shape. The traditions carried around campfires, the stories preserved by memory, the symbols carved into stone, the gatherings that united entire communities, were slowly creating foundations that later civilizations would continue to build upon. Religion, as we recognize it today, was still centuries away, but its roots may already have been growing. Our journey has taken us across hundreds of thousands of years. From small bands of hunter-gatherers wandering ancient landscapes, to the first burials, the first cave paintings, the first symbols, the first rituals, and eventually, the first monumental gathering places built by human hands. Yet after all this time, one question still remains. What did our ancestors truly believe? It is perhaps the oldest unanswered question in human history. For archaeologists, the past speaks only through what survives. Stone tools, animal bones, ancient hearts, buried skeletons, fragments of red ochre, cave paintings hidden beneath mountains, massive stone monuments weathered by thousands of years. These discoveries allow us to reconstruct remarkable parts of humanity's story. They reveal where people lived, what they hunted, how they cared for one another, when they migrated, how their technology evolved, and slowly, how their minds became increasingly symbolic. But archaeology also has limits. A stone tool can tell us how it was shaped. It cannot tell us what its maker hoped for. A burial can reveal how someone was laid to rest. It cannot tell us what prayers, if any, were spoken beside the grave. A painted animal on a cave wall can be dated with impressive accuracy. Yet no scientific instrument can tell us exactly why that image was painted. Was it art? A memory? A teaching tool? A ritual? A story? Or something entirely different? Sometimes, the most important questions leave behind the fewest traces. This uncertainty can feel frustrating. But in science, uncertainty is not failure. It is honesty. Archaeologists do not invent answers where evidence is missing. Instead, they follow the evidence wherever it leads. They compare discoveries. They test competing ideas. They revise old conclusions when new evidence appears. Every excavation, every new dating technique, every remarkable discovery, adds another piece to an enormous puzzle that may never be completely finished. And perhaps, that is exactly what makes the story so fascinating. The deeper we explore humanity's past, the more we discover how much there is still to learn. Throughout this journey we have explored many ideas. Animism, symbolic thinking, early burials, cave art, ritual specialists, seasonal gatherings, the first ceremonial monuments. Some of these ideas are strongly supported by archaeological evidence. Others remain careful interpretations. Many continue to be debated by scientists around the world. That is the nature of archaeology. It is a conversation between evidence, curiosity, and time. It is also important to remember what this story is not. This documentary is not an attempt to explain, compare, or judge the beliefs of any modern religion. The world's great religions each possess their own sacred histories, traditions, scriptures, and teachings that are deeply meaningful to billions of people today. Those beliefs deserve respect. Our journey has looked much further back, to a time before written history, before civilizations, before organized religions took the forms we recognize today. We have explored not certainty, but possibility, not doctrine, but discovery. Yet despite the vast differences between ancient hunter-gatherers and the modern world, one remarkable thread seems to connect us all: curiosity, the desire to ask questions, to search for meaning, to wonder what lies beyond the horizon, beyond death, beyond the stars. That curiosity has shaped every chapter of human history. It inspired explorers to cross unknown oceans, scientists to study the universe, artists to paint, writers to tell stories, and countless generations to ask questions that still echo today. In many ways, our ancestors were not so different from us. They looked upward at the same moon. They watched the same stars. They felt the same fear during violent storms. They celebrated new life. They mourned those they loved. And somewhere, perhaps around a quiet fire beneath an endless night sky, they asked questions whose answers remain beyond our reach. Perhaps we will never know exactly what they believed. Perhaps no future discovery will ever uncover every lost story buried beneath the earth. But that mystery is part of our shared human heritage. The search itself has become one of the greatest adventures our species has ever undertaken. A journey that continues with every archaeological discovery, every scientific breakthrough, and every new generation willing to ask ancient questions once again. Long before temples rose, long before sacred books were written, long before civilizations filled the earth, humanity was already looking toward the sky, searching for meaning. Exactly what they believed, we may never know. But the search itself may have been the beginning of one of humanity's greatest journeys.